Alright, good evening everyone. My name is Benjamin and welcome to another video talking about the 2020 election. Before I get into it, as always, likes, comments, subscriptions, they always do help and I greatly appreciate each and every one of them. And just consider this an announcement for a live stream tomorrow night, as always around 9-ish p.m. basically whenever I decide to go live at that point. Maybe a little bit early, but no later than 9. But anyway, I kind of want to talk a little bit about this article that I read earlier today, while on my lunch break, of course. It's overall pretty good, and there's a few really good points here to bring up, specifically when they were talking about the pandemic. A lot of the things they bring up is that it could be very crazy because a lot of polling places could actually wind up getting closed. Which is not exactly a good thing. It's going to force longer lines, which could eventually decrease turnout. And let me just fast forward to where they're... there we go. Their table of contents for this longer article is... So, yes, of course, chances are there's still going to be some lingering effects of a pandemic going on probably into November. Let's be honest, there's no signs of this thing slowing down or ending by then, so that's going to be fun. And I disagree with this very first sentence. 1920, the Spanish flu was in full swing at that point, and as we all know, the Spanish flu killed about 120 million people worldwide. And a certain Kung Flu is not anywhere near that level of danger. I mean, is it super contagious? Yeah, but is it lethal at that level? No, not really. No, it isn't. It's not Spanish flu levels of bad. Okay, so I think that first statement is just patently untrue. Anyway, moving back to other things. Yeah, it could very well decrease the turnout, especially in-person turnout, and increase the prevalence of absentee and vote by mail turnout. And likely we're going to see an election with decreased turnout regardless. Historically, this is very good for the GOP, at least in terms of reduced turnout overall. But vote by mail could be very bad for the GOP, at least historically speaking. So we don't really know what's going to happen, and we could very easily see some strange election results. States that maybe we wouldn't have thought were competitive might be competitive. States that we thought were competitive might be safe. It's going to be... It could lead to some very weird results. New technology and new processes, yeah, that's basically kind of what I'm talking about there. If we remember correctly, back in February, before anybody had even heard of any pandemic or anything like that, the Democrats so horribly botched their own party-run caucuses in Iowa that there's a good chance we will never know who truly won the Iowa caucuses from this year. And that could, with a lot of mail-in ballots potentially taking up to a week to get fully counted, that could bring a lot of questions, in particularly narrow victories for one party or the other, about the legitimacy of those wins in those states. Who knows? And I could go down this list and talk about them each and every single one of them, but, most electoral systems in the United States have not gotten a ton of funding this year. That's mostly true, despite both campaigns raising record amounts of money and likely going to be spending record amounts of money. A lot of voters are going to have to go to new polling locations. Also, in the Drought of Funding category, most people who work election and polling stations tend to be older people. I think they found the average age of a poll worker was 61, and that happens to be the high risk demographic. And a lot of them might just say, I'm not going to do it this year. And that could lead to more poll closings or polling station closings. Dislocated voters, well, again, older people. A lot of them, especially a lot of nursing homes, aren't going to be hosting their normal equipment. They're not going to be polling stations this year because of the pandemic. Schools as well. A lot of them are pulling out of their historical responsibility to hold polling stations. 5 and 6, okay, I mean, they're trying to drum up, Russia is a bigger deal than it really is. Now, the misinformation and disinformation, okay, fine, I'll give them that one, but you're not going to see foreign nations actually changing vote totals. It's not really possible. The last point I want to talk about is they try to bring up that Donald Trump may not respect the results of the election if he loses, which, okay, I mean, he's made that threat before. We haven't had to see it. Perhaps, thankfully, we haven't had to see it. But they talk about... somewhere in the article, they mentioned that some progressives might be afraid that Donald Trump is going to try and cancel the election. And let me just tell you, that is literally impossible. It's literally impossible. And he can't even use federal troops as poll watchers or anything like that. Again, because it's kind of literally impossible. And the reason why is because of a gem in the Constitution discussing how presidential elections will work. It creates the Electoral College, of course, and it states that the states shall have the power, specifically the state legislatures, shall have the power to appoint presidential electors in a manner in which they deem fit, and they will vote in December. I think it's like the first Monday following the second. It's a weird way they choose the date, but the state legislatures get to pick how the electors for that state are chosen. So even if we had a worst case scenario where a bunch of states decide, you know what, it's too dangerous to have anybody voting in person, and to avoid fraud, any potential fraud from mail-in ballots, we're going to do this the old school way and have the state legislatures pick the presidential electors. Now, this means that the state's governor has no say And I could talk about that, and I could do a video. As a matter of fact, I think I maybe did a video on what would happen if we went back to the old school way of choosing presidential electors, which means no state elections, obviously. Yeah. I may redo that if I have done it already, but that's how it works. So the president can't just unilaterally say, yeah, I'm not gonna, we're not gonna have election, we're gonna delay it or cancel it until the next one. Because guess what? The president's term, whether he wants it to or not, his term ends, per the Constitution, at noon on January 20th, 2021. The vice president's term ends at that point as well. And then you've got some weird, archaic system. I believe if there's no sitting president at that point, the next person in line would be the president pro tempore of the Senate, and then the Speaker of the House. Or, sorry, no. It would be the Speaker of the House, president pro tempore of the Senate, then all the secretaries. But they're, well, actually, I believe those offices remain filled because there's no term limit specified for them as far as I understand it, at least constitutionally. So, for example, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, I'm just throwing a name out there for gits and shiggles, decided to remain in office, and assuming no election was held at any point in any state, because the House of Representatives would theoretically certify any electoral college results. But again, we're assuming that representatives haven't been chosen, senators haven't been chosen. We don't have a Speaker of the House. We could very well have a president pro tempore of the Senate, who would maybe be a Democrat. I don't know. It depends on what governors in states that had Republicans in those seats do. Chances are they pick Republicans because most of those Republican Senate seats up for grabs are in states with a Republican governor. So you probably still have a Republican as president pro tempore of the Senate, which means President Chuck Grassley, everybody. That'd be interesting. But let's say that doesn't even happen, and it's a tie, and they can't decide. The person who would fall in line to it would be, say, Mike Pompeo. Again, just an example. So even then, Donald Trump can't stay in office. And if he did, I mean, the U.S. military would be obliged to remove him from office if he tried to overstay his term. I would assume the Secret Service too, as well as, well, like I said, the U.S. military, and you could even argue the people as well. But I don't want to go into extremism, so I'm going to say don't do that. The military will handle it, because the military actually takes its oath to the Constitution pretty damn seriously. Some people will say the actions of federal troops in Portland would beg to differ, but I find it really hard-pressed to call what's going on in Portland peaceful. But anyway, reality is we will more than likely have a peaceful transition of power if Donald Trump loses. And if Biden loses, I don't think that there's going to be too much of a challenge. There's still a long time till November. So we'll see. I don't really feel that there's going to be anything too crazy or too fishy is more accurate. We can see some very interesting stuff happen. Another thing this article brought up, and that's why I reminded myself to go here to the dislocated voters, is college students. They do vote, not in tremendous numbers, but college students do vote, and they can vote in either their hometown or wherever they're going to college. Depends on if they've changed their residency or if they want to vote in their hometown. And if colleges are closed or they're not allowed to go back to the dorms and have to take their classes online, or they can't find their new polling place in whatever city or town they're in, chances are they won't vote at all. Now, whether that matters in the long run and whether that actually matters in the election is a different story altogether. Because, again, college students don't really vote in large numbers. But it would be something to look for, and it would be something to watch absolutely positively. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stop it here. As always, likes, comments, subscriptions always do help, and I greatly appreciate them. I'm going to be live streaming somewhere around 9 p.m. tomorrow, and hope you all have a nice day. See you next time. Take it easy. Bye-bye.